Hello everybody and welcome back to the Lukgraph 1/32 scale Caproni, and today we are getting back down to the workbench and we are really going to be putting metal or the pedal to the metal and going full throttle on this one for the next few weeks, because this is going to be a full week's worth of bench time in this video right here. And we're going to keep on doing this until this build is complete. So hopefully in 2 to 3 weeks this one will be done. But let's get right back down to the workbench. We're going to be finishing off painting the engines and keeping on going on with the rest of the paint. Hopefully getting the painting done in this video. So let's get right down there and I'll see you in a second. Alright, to start off with, we are finishing off the cylinder heads on the engines, painting these black. I'm going to paint this one on camera, and then the other ones I'm going to paint off camera right here. We're just using the aqua line from MRP black to paint these. I'm really enjoying these paints. They go down nice and easy. Don't have to thin. I'm just pouring it straight out of the bottle and painting it. It's kind of like their lacquer line where it's just a pour and go type deal. And the coverage on them is really nice. I haven't had any issues with any of the colors that I've used so far from the aqua line on these. Not really worried about hitting any of the other like spark plug wires or any of the other parts of the engine, because I'm going to be coming back later on and doing some touch-up paint on everything in a little bit. I'm not going to put that on camera, but I do come back and do touch up on the copper and the natural steel and all that before I completely am finished with the engines. Alright, and up next we have the touch-ups with the AK metallic natural steel. AK, you can see the number right there. Then we're just going to be touching up this one bar right here, and then we'll come back later on. There's another bar that I want to touch up with this natural steel color or natural metal color. But again, this paint comes down really nice as well. No issues with that. Doing another touch up on another one. Now we're going to be moving forward to painting the copper using the Tamiya Dark Copper XF28. And we're going to be painting this copper piping right here. This did take a couple coats of copper to get coverage on it to a point where I was happy with. So we're getting this first one done, and then the other ones I'm going to do off camera. And then we have a few other coats that need to go down on it as well, but that is also off camera. Making sure we get the back side of this as well. Just one more thing to touch up with the natural metal from AK right here. That bar that's going across the top, wanted to get that painted up. Getting a couple of those done right here. And up next we're going to be moving on to the spark plug wires. I'm using the AK Real Colors Deck Tan. And we're going to get those painted up real quick. I used the lead wire for the spark plug wires, as you saw in the previous video. Bent really easily. Just gonna do one engine on video, and then the other ones will be done off video. All right, now up next we're going to be airbrushing the radiators and some of the other parts that go onto the engines and such. And I started off using the AK Real Colors or Extreme Metals copper. Now this was the first and only color I've ever had issues with from AK Extreme Colors, and I did figure out one of the issues I was having was my air pressure was still way too high. I still had it set for doing the Stynylrez primer, and I needed to lower it back down to about 12 to 13 psi. And once I did that, I started out not having any issues with the paint. At least it dried kind of quick like the aluminums and the metals do. It was still a slower dry time than all the other ones, but it still went on just as nicely as all the other paints. Just a little bit longer of a dry time. Just lightly misting that onto the pieces. We're going to paint a few other pieces off camera, and now we're going to be painting the guns using the MRP gunmetal. I did try using the AK Real Colors gunmetal, but it turned out to be too silver, as you saw in that gun right there. So the MRP came out nice and black, and now we're going to be painting the handles using the Tamiya Red Brown XF90. Small little brush right there, carefully. I had to get the camera back into area, and I zoomed in a little too much, so I apologize for the focus here. But getting those painted for the wood handles on both guns. The guns are actually pretty nicely detailed on here for 3D printed guns. And now we're getting the decals onto the instrument dial right here. 3 different decals go on here. The 2 dials on the bottom, you have to cut these decals to around the decal. The whole sheet is one piece of carrier film. So I got all 3 decals put in, and now we're going to be putting a glass face on top of those. So I'm using that UV clear resin. We're just going to drop in some resin drops on each dial, and then after that is done, I'll come in with my UV flashlight and hold that in for about 30-45 seconds just to really make sure it cures good. And even then, I'm still letting it go and not touching the dials for probably another day, because I do believe the batteries in my flashlight are starting to go bad, so the light is not as strong as what it should be. And for those 2 decals that I messed up on, I just painted the white faces on there. And then now we're going to be painting the bombs. Now I did do a Google search, and the bombs for the Italian bombers in World War I were either left with the natural steel color or they were painted olive drab. So I'm doing a mix. I'm doing some bombs with the steel and some bombs with the olive drab right here, as you can see. Then I'm just going to be painting the bombs all different colors right here with the olive drab or the steel, just to mix them up on the bomb racks. Now I also did say with my Google search that some of the bombs were painted with stripes around the nose to annotate what type of bomb it was, so I'm going to be using decal stripes for that. Now we're getting into adding in the exhaust pipes right here, getting those all glued in. I did end up having to break that first one off because I did realize that the orientation of them was wrong. So just breaking them off real quick and then rotating them around to get the right orientation. And then the other issue I had wasn't really an issue, but the second exhaust in is supposed to be a short pipe, so it fits with the strut that goes over the engine. So here you'll see I put the long one in, but later on I go back and I break the long one off and put it with a short one. Luckily, there are a plethora of extras just in case something breaks off. But sadly, the instructions for the engines didn't really tell you about that short pipe. You have to look at the pictures later on in the build to see that actually one of them needs to be a short pipe, because it comes with like 8 or 9 short pipes, but you only need 3 short pipes for all 3 engines. Now we're painting the leather handles for the control yoke right here using the AK leather brown. Just getting that painted on real quick. And now we're going to start painting the wheels. Now the wheels or the rubber back during World War I was not tinted black yet. It was more of a gray color. So for this I am using the Tamiya Sky Gray XF19, and this is from one of my friends who I asked about this, and also the Wingnut Wings page gave good reference for this. I have painted all the other wheels at this point, and luckily this wheel right here is an inside wheel, so you're not going to be able to see any of the sidewall. So if I do mess up any, it's not really a big deal on this one. I was a lot more careful on the outboard ones that you would be able to see, but still I did get it a pretty good lineup on this. And here in a second you're going to see all the wheels together. Right here, as you can see, all the wheels painted. I used the canvas type 2 from MRP for the canvas. Now we're going to go back. We are actually starting the pre-shading for the fuselage. And to pre-shade, some of the areas are going to be wood, like right in here. So I'm going ahead and I am doing the woodwork on the outside. Sadly, all this detail is going to be painted over with the main color, but this wood on the underside of the paint is actually going to make a difference on the top side paint. So going ahead and getting the woodwork done on these right here, and then also on the main cockpit tub, I redid the woodwork on the outside, and we'll be painting over all that a little bit later on. You're going to get to see the cockpit tub here in a little bit. But right now, like I did before, I'm just spreading the oil on here, and then I'm going to be wiping it off with the brush, and that's going to give me my wood grain texture, which is also going to make a difference in the paint, because you're actually going to be able to see and feel the wood grain in the paint, because the paint from MRP is so thin it still shows off all that detail. I'm sure there's probably better ways to do wood grain, but this is the way that works for me. I'm getting better at it. This is only my 3rd World War I aircraft, so it's still a learning technique for me, or learning curve for me. So I am getting better versus where I was when I first started on the Felixstowe. And I'm getting more and more happy with the wood grain that I'm coming out with on every build, or every part that I do. Just seems to be a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm trying to carve in some knots in the wood, and then I'm going to break it down with the brush again. See, the knots are starting to come out. I had some hair, or some brush hair come out of that, so I'm trying to clean that up. And also try not to make it look like just straight lines going across. using a couple different brushes with different blends or brush heads on here, and wiping all the excess off of the brush after I do a few swipes, just to bring down the wood grain. Working on the inside of this was a little bit of a nightmare because you couldn't really see what you were doing. Even with the optimizer, I could not get a good light on the inside. Alright, so now working on the other one, it's going to be the same process on this one right here. And here's the finished product. I hit these with a matte coat and a top coat of clear orange from Tamiya. And there's the main cockpit tub with the woodwork on that as well. Alright, so now we get to finally start some actual assembly on this kit. We're getting the wheels put on the landing gear struts right here. We have the brass rods in place to really give it some support. I'm just using some CA glue to really anchor these into place. Nice tight fit on those, and squared up nice and easy with no issue on those. And up next we're going to be working on the aft landing gear, which I have a little bit of a steel rod, and then you poke it in the hole, and then we're going to slide the other wheel through there. It does have a spacer on one side to get the correct spacing between the two wheels. So, and then after that we have the actual landing gear strut sliding in on the bar. I kind of used it to slide down so that way I could use the same bar, and then after everything is on, after this next wheel is on, I want to cut it to shape or to length and then glue on the outer wheel. Cut it a little bit long, so I'm going to have to trim it back down. And these were very hard bars to cut. Couldn't use any of my other cutters. I had to use the heavy duty cutters, and still used a lot of grip strength to get that to cut. So those are all done, and now we are actually starting the pre-shading of the fuselage and the wings and everything. Starting off with the light ghost gray, I'm just doing the squiggly lines all over the place. No rhyme or reason to it. This is going to really break up the monotone with the paint. It's also going to help lessen the amount of top coat that I need to do with going over a lighter color versus going over all black right here. You can see the wood grain on the top, and then on the bottom we have the natural metal for the cockpit tub, and then this is the elevator for the aft stabilizer right here. Just going in, squiggly lines all over the place. No uniform pattern to it. Just kind of writing cursive, graffiti, all types of stuff in there. So we're doing this light ghost gray all over the fuselage, and then after this we're going to be coming in with a yellow on the actual ribs to do that as a highlight for our pre-shading. Now post-shading we're going to come in afterwards and mask all the ribs off and get those painted. But for the pre-shading, I'm using the lemon yellow from MRP, and we're just going to be going over the rib areas, the raised areas of the fabric where it goes over the supports, and we're just going to highlight that yellow so that way the green that we're going to be painting the fuselage will just be a little bit lighter, or a little bit of a highlight over that spot right there. And then we're also going to be doing post shading and everything going on afterwards. And also with the interior, I'm going to be redoing the wood frame work after paint is done, because I figured it'd be a lot easier to mask those canvas blocks off than trying to mask off the woodwork right there. Alright, so that's everything for the Caproni this week. Got done with all the paint for the most part. We just have the main shade of paint to do, and that paint is going to be delivered a little bit later today. I had to order some because I didn't have the right colors for the paint scheme that I am doing. So went ahead and ordered those. Those should be getting delivered here in the next few hours. So next week what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finishing off the main paint on this and then doing the decals, and hopefully we're going to start assembly. We did get a little bit of assembly done with the landing gear and a few other parts with the engines especially. So those are all ready to go. Just need to do the main paint and decals, and then we're going to start assembly, and that's going to entail starting the rigging as well. Once we get all the once we get the two wings together, we're going to be doing all the rigging as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're really starting to see some daylight at the end of the tunnel for this build, because we are getting really close. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys next week. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button for notifications of when I post future videos for like next week's Caproni build. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.